Hi, Education Minister Dr. Blade Nzimande, speaking today, it said that several changes will be put in place to ensure the phased-in reopening of institutions of higher learning, and he also announced several measures that will be implemented to help students that are going back to school. Let's get reaction now from Thuto Gabaphethe, who's the president of the Wits Student Council. A very good evening to you, Mr. Gabaphethe, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Are you largely happy with the measures announced by the minister?
Good evening, Tsepiso, and good evening to your viewers. I think I must say that the reaction to this announcement by the minister is similar to the reaction that we had when he last announced and spoke to the media, which is largely to be concerned about how the minister is sort of allowing the institutional autonomy of universities that we have seen. I think it's very problematic that even in a state of national disaster is declared by the president of the country, the minister continues to allow certain decisions to be made by the universities, and it largely perpetuates the many inequalities that we've often spoken out against, which are prevalent in the sector. So I think as students, we are not surprised by what we are feeling as a result of the online learning program continuing. We are not surprised, but in fact, we are used to it. We are used to feeling, suppressed by the institutions that we fall in. Because what is happening is the minister announces measures like N+2, announces phased-in return, etc., etc. But you have institutions under vice chancellors still having the autonomy to decide over many of these things, and it, to be quite frank, perpetuates the inequalities in the sector, not only intra-institutionally but inter-institutionally as well. So,
what in particular are you objecting to? Is it the cost structure, or is it just? I mean, the minister did mention the interventions for NSFAS, for instance, but as was pointed out not only by yourself but other unions, that COVID-19 has wrought on some very difficult circumstances for learners, especially for parents who hadn't anticipated that they'd lose their jobs or that their pay would be cut. So is this what you're referring to specifically?
I think we must say that as the SRC, and I think as many student leaders as well, we are welcoming of the fact that NSFAS has continued to pay out students allowances, to pay out students during this period. Secondly, we are appreciative of the fact that there will be a looking into the N+2 issues that are there. But I think so we are welcoming the strides that are there from the department, the NSFAS continuing to do payouts, NSFAS looking at the issues of allowances, etc., etc. But there are other issues which the department is in our view, misapprehending, because we have raised the issue of N+2 to be a very problematic issue. So, for instance, the administrator of NSFAS did mention the fact that there are instances where students get paid out their monies only to be unfunded, or their status to change at a later stage to be unfunded. And it is some of the things that the department is overlooking, because we've raised this to say, one, and the NSFAS pays some students at the beginning of the year only to withdraw their money to say you are unfunded. Secondly, there's an issue with N+2 to say N+2 does not look at, so for instance, N+2 started being in effect in 2018 to now, but it looks at the number of years that you've in fact been in the system. And in our view, it's very exclusionary, because it says if a tutor has been at Wits for 5 years and a bursary has now decided to drop tutor, because tutor has already exceeded N+2, he does not qualify for NSFAS. And that, in essence, means the policy is being applied retrospectively. So students that were there in 2016, etc., are being looked at and are being disadvantaged of the opportunity to be funded by NSFAS. And the department is deliberately, whilst we welcome the strides that are there, but the department is deliberately, overlooking some of these things.
Now, I want to, and not to belabor the point around the fee structures and the economies of scale and the lack of uniformity that you would like to see that the minister should implement. The universities have obviously argued that that can't happen because they also have to take care of their own running of the universities. And I also want to talk about e-learning. The minister mentioning the fact that laptops will be available. Are you confident that they'll be available to all students who need them?
I think I must start on the issue of cost. And it goes back to the sectoral issues that I raised earlier on about the inequality. You go to the university, you ask them about the issue of cost, not only of the fee structure, but also of the accommodation, of the rentals, accommodation, private accommodation, etc., which the minister touched on today. You go to the university, you engage them on that. They tell you that they are waiting for the minister's directive. The minister comes to the nation today and then says that it has been left over to institutions to have a conversation with service providers. It's problematic in our view. But secondly, with regards to the issue of devices, I think we must say it's going to be a very difficult process. But it is also problematic in the sense that you have institutions that have already assisted students. So at Wits, for instance, there are students, about 500 students that have already been assisted with devices. But the problematic nature of this is that not all students are covered by that. The issue of data. At Wits University, you have the university saying that it has struck a deal with Vodacom to be the service provider for data through this period. That essentially means that all students at Wits University must now switch from all other network providers to use Vodacom. Problematic.
Okay. All right.
It begs questions of the competition, etc., around there. But it's going to be a difficult process to be done. But it's also problematic that it's only being done now, whilst the academic program has already begun. Okay. So you ask the question, what substantive relief is there for those students that are being left behind?
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Thuto Gabaphethe is president of Wits Student Council. We will at a later stage be speaking to the Higher Education Deputy Minister after the 7 o'clock news headlines.